welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements, and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
To those who are listening in the new year.
In the new year, 2022. Here we are.
Yeah, can you believe it?
We have today a very special guest, a good friend of ours, someone that we've both known for more time than we probably want to admit.
It's been kind of the theme of the last couple shows. We've been bringing on people we've known for decades.
So we have Glenn Hammer. He was, as a lot of our listeners will know, the head of the Arizona Chamber, the CEO of the Arizona Chamber for many years. He's now moved on to Texas to be
left us.
The president and CEO of the Texas Association of Business, which is, I guess, the equivalent of the Arizona Chamber, but just a little bit bigger.
As I said earlier, it's the Arizona Chamber on steroids.
Yeah, so, everything's bigger in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas. Well, Glenn, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you.
Well, great to be on the show. And I've known both of you for a number of years. And geez, I mean, Sean, we go back to the 1994 days.
That's
where
right.
John Chaddick has his WIDS kid named Sean Noble.
Well,
I was
oh my gosh, I'm going to start using that. Sean Chaddick's whiz kid.
It's true. Sean stood out back then, and the results were pretty incredible.
Well, you think about that cycle, the 94 cycle, because were you with Kyle or Salmon at that point?
I was with Kyle.
That's
so
right.
I was, I joke, our good friend Jake Logan, who was the lowest on the totem pole. I think I was, but Jake argues he was. I think I make better coffee than Jake, for what that's worth. But yeah, that 94 cycle, I mean, you just think about the people that came out of it. And now my friend from Texas, Starley Coleman, she came out of the 94 race. So a lot of good people.
I feel like there was a whole passel of young, talented men and women who cut their. I mean, there was just so much going on in that cycle.
Well, we kind of did a podcast about that some months ago. We commented and reflected on a year in our lives that just meant so much to us, both personally and politically. 94
was it. And I think so.
And where I think it's relevant to today is that spirit in 94, we weren't in it for the money. We were in it because we believed the contract with America. We believed that there was a better way to govern the United States of America. And it was, I felt like we were all on a mission. We were maybe with different people to accomplish that mission, but we were united.
Yeah. Well, and the connection of the various members of the delegation who got elected, you had Chaddick and Hayworth and Salmon were all elected that cycle, along with Kyle to the Senate.
Yeah.
And
that was probably one of the most exciting things.
It was amazing. And Glenn, you did Kyle's Senate campaign and worked for the senator. Then you went on to work for Matt Salmon.
I worked for Matt. I was legislative assistant for Senator Kyle, and worked for Matt as his legislative director, ending as chief of staff. And I know you worked for a number of years as John Chaddick's chief of staff. But I'll tell you, Sean, that walk from the Senate to the House, that's the longest walk in showbiz.
It's true.
It's a long walk if you do it actually outside. But if you know the inner workings of the corridors back then, you can do it fairly quickly.
It's still a long walk. I mean, I felt like it was a long walk from Cannon to Rayburn.
Maybe not literally, more just the there's quite a difference between the two bodies. But
well, the problem with the walk from Cannon to Rayburn is that once you get there, you still don't know where you are.
Yeah, Rayburn I never figured out. And I don't know. Glenn, you might have figured it out. But I think...
Not really.
I mean, Cannon was kind of Matt was in Cannon, right?
Matt was in Cannon, yeah. First floor. So it reduced the chances of getting lost. And it also maximized... It made it easier to vote a little bit. He was always pretty close to the floor, so we could really risk things and have them go up the last second.
I remember. So at the time, Bob Stump was the dean of the delegation.
Of course he was.
And
Bob Stump is still the dean of the delegation. I mean,
God rest his soul.
Well, I mean, you mentioned his name and people just pause.
Yeah,
so it's a good thing.
But he was had an amazing voting record in the sense that he never missed a vote. And I remember a few months into Shadeg's first term, there were a couple times where it was close, and he was having a conversation with Senator Kyle, and Senator Kyle was like, "Look, you just need to miss a vote because it's going to drive you crazy until you do." Because there's going to be times, because Shadeg at the time had young, Stephen and Courtney were fairly young. They were in school. He said, you're going to have to miss votes at some point. So you may as well just miss a vote, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And Shadeg didn't really take that advice, but he ended up missing a vote and I don't remember the exact circumstances, but he was on the Hill and somehow missed a vote.
Yeah.
And so it was done. But I don't even know why I brought that up.
Yeah, no, but it's a big for the newer members. They want to make the votes. They're excited to be there, and those streaks and records mean something. But then you learn that you talk about forecasting. If I wanted to look dumb for a day, I'd call leadership and ask what the vote schedule would be. Tell Matt Savage, and then 5 minutes later it'd be completely different.
That's exactly.
And that would be like, I thought you called. I said I did call.
Well, and not only leadership, but that was true of committee staff as well.
Yeah.
And I was staffing Shadeg on government reform and oversight during the Clinton investigations, and we had a really important subpoena vote on somebody they were going to subpoena. Shadeg was at Resources Committee, and I kept checking with staff. When's the vote? He's going to have to get over here because that hearing room was in Rayburn, and he was in Cannon for Resources. And sure enough, they just flat out didn't, they changed it. And so they all of a sudden they call a vote, and I'm scrambling to try to, get the congressman there, and he ended up missing the vote. And man, I got my ass chewed.
I can only imagine.
First by Dan Burton, the chairman, for letting my member miss the vote. And I'll never forget, Dave Bossy standing next to him because Dave Bossy was a staffer for the committee at the time. And he's just kind of like chuckling like, whoa, this guy's getting his butt kicked. And then Shadeg pulls me in, and I heard it. Yeah. And I never let that happen again.
Well, and
I'll just tell it a side story because we were just young staffers and learning our way. So I worked on the Kyle for Senate campaign, and you always call him John when you're running for office. The second he wins, it's Senator. And it just felt natural. But I didn't necessarily make all the adjustments as a youngster when I got on Capitol Hill. And I'll never forget, we go to one of the first meetings, I'm staffing Senator Kyle, and I sit basically in Senator Warner's chair. And that was, and Kyle could not have been more gracious, but it was just sort of looking at me like, look at the other staffers. The goal is to blend in to the upholstery, basically. And from that point, I learned, the bobtail, the light blue shirt, the suit, and stay as close to the wall as possible.
Exactly. I'll tell you that there's a lot of staffers who spent their life with their back against the wall.
Well, and it's an interesting lesson that a lot of people, both in business and in politics in general, don't understand. Like, the staff are the people who are running, the office. The staff is getting the member to where the member needs to be. And if you have an objective and you want to accomplish something as a business person or as a lobbyist who's trying to get a member to do something for you, the key is the staff, and the key is to taking care of the staff. And I just remember, a lot of people just don't recognize that when they go into a member's office, and they end up treating the staff really poorly.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why they can't get anything done.
Right.
Chris, exactly right. It is just because the volume of activity on Capitol Hill is difficult to explain unless you've been in it. It's just, It moves like an action movie. It's NFL speed all the time. And without great staff, I don't care who you are, it simply is impossible to be an effective member. So when you have people that it's a great tip for anyone that wants to advocate with a congressional member. Just be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
And your chances of success, it's the right thing to do, but your chances of success are dramatically escalated because at the end of the day, the member is going to probably ask the staffer in charge, what his or her recommendation is.
Exactly. And always follow up with that staffer who's sitting in the meeting with you where you're pitching whatever you're pitching.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm listening to you guys, and back then, for me, I was living vicariously through you, wanting to be in Washington, but being in Tucson, learning the beer business, but would go back to DC every fall and spring, and be in members' offices lobbying for whatever the national beer wholesalers had on the docket at the time, and I would have to educate everybody around me. Okay, get that staffer's card and write to them and thank them specifically. You can thank the member, but thank them, and then offer whatever you want to offer them.
Well, and
free beer or whatever else, because they'll appreciate it.
Yeah, here's the best advice I can give to anybody that's going to meet with a member of Congress or needs to get something done. Treat the scheduler like gold.
Oh yeah,
because that is the most important person in the office.
Absolutely.
They may not be the highest paid, but they are by far the most important person in the office.
Absolutely. Thank them. Ask them where they're from. Ask them what they're doing. Be kind, because I can't tell you how many times I've just been waiting to see a member, and these associations come in and they're just so rude to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah,
and they wonder why they're out in the hallway meeting with with an LA
right.
at the end of the day.
Exactly. So Glenn, talk to us about moving from, how many, you were 12, 13 years at Chamber? It feels like 20, but maybe it was less than that.
It does feel like 20. 14 years. 14 years.
That's amazing. That's how long I worked for Shattuck. That's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
And probably like for you, Sean, it went by really, really fast. There was always something new on the horizon that kept things lively and interesting. You worked for a great member of Congress. I worked for a great organization. But, I think really what happened, it was I loved being in Arizona. My family still loves being in Arizona. They've read too much Arizona Chamber propaganda, apparently, but that's another story. But the job in Texas just came out of nowhere, and it just felt like it was the right thing to go for. And I also just felt on the other side of the equation, 14 years at one chamber is a long time. It's really too long. And Sean, I know how your career has soared post Shattuck. I hope I have that same fortune in Texas. But it felt right on both sides. The move to Texas felt right, as well as it was time to give the Arizona Chamber the chance to reset and get some fresh blood. And I'm grateful that my good friend Danny Seiden is running the show over there now.
Yeah. So
still, it was a huge loss.
Oh, it was a huge loss. Yeah.
Because
you have huge shoes to fill. Your shoes are. You may not be a very large person, but your shoes are massive.
Well, I have a hook shot that makes me 7 foot equivalent.
That's right.
But I need it.
Well, I think in terms of the politics of business in Arizona and just general politics, I think there's two people who I look to in the state who were very consequential during their specific times at the organizations they led. One is you. Because before you leading the chamber really wasn't much of anything. It was a confluence of just big business, and that didn't really do much and didn't really, I don't think, accomplish much. The other one is Darcy Olson when she ran Goldwater. Mm-hmm. I mean before Darcy, Goldwater just it wasn't much of anything. And what's interesting, both of you really made a massive impact on both those organizations, and you deserve a lot of credit.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you. You served on our board. I mean, you were a big part of that, and I really think the secret sauce at the Arizona Chamber, it was really a great board of different interests, different sizes of businesses, and it just sort of sorted itself out. And we had a great team. Garrick Taylor did a phenomenal job, and Garrick was with me 3 stops with Max Salmon when Sean was on Capitol Hill at the state Republican Party. 2006-ish and at the state chamber. So, having great people there as well was really important.
So talk to us about what, you made the transition to Texas. What are your goals? What's going on in Texas? What are the similarities, the differences between Arizona and Texas.
So
Obviously,
on a 30,
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, Scott, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
Go ahead. No, I have nothing. What I have to say is way less important than what you have to say on that
So
stuff.
if I could frame it this way, first of all, everyone I've met in Texas, they love Arizona. So coming from Arizona was a big plus. Like if I said, I'm coming from New York or where I grew up, or California, where I am right now, actually, even despite my background, it's where my in-laws live. I would have been looked at a different way. But the best way to think about Texas right now is it is the center of the free market system, but also for those who are conservative, and I'll just say Republicans. We're all Republicans here. Although at Chambers, you're the party of business, but I think we all know our voter ID cards. Texas is the center of the universe right now for Republicans. It's a little bit like California was during the Reagan heydays. And I sometimes joke, Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida, not Texas, but he's in Texas quite a bit. and so are other aspiring national candidates, because that's just where the center of gravity is at this point in time.
What, I think you're right. There's just a lot of good stuff that comes out of Texas. And so many people are moving there. I mean, obviously we have it's the fastest growing state. Arizona's, I think, third. Is it Texas, Florida, Arizona? Is that?
And
Exactly.
Tennessee. And Tennessee's in there too.
Yeah.
Texas, Florida, Arizona are the big three. They're during the first year of the pandemic, July 20 to July 21. Those three states gained more people than any other state. And the three big losers, I mean, you can't write this stuff. New York, California, and Illinois, all policy basket cases.
Yeah. That's a great
And
point.
Sean and Chris, I mean, look, I love Arizona. I think the desert is magical. It's almost religious. But people from Los Angeles are not moving from Los Angeles to Phoenix for the beachfront property.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something going on policy-wise. And that's why I think the work that you two are doing and that I'm trying to do is so darn important, because there are really two systems. There are two, if I could just go, my big spiel is this. There's two big battles going on. One is international. It's the U.S. versus China.
Sure.
And the U.S. has got to win if we want to keep a free world and a free, safe society. And within the United States is California versus Texas. And Texas has got to win. And it's really that simple. And, states like Arizona and Florida, thank goodness, are really wired along the ways of Texas. And that's why I think human beings in the freest country in the history of the world are moving to our great states.
Yeah, they're voting with their feet, for sure.
Yeah, but there is one issue that you're beginning to hear a lot of, and a concern is, how do you re-educate or educate those people moving from California, Illinois, New York to remember why they moved? To remember that you're fleeing a high tax, high regulatory, almost a failed nation state in many ways. The policies that have come out of Florida, Texas, Arizona with regard to COVID have been very moderating. And so remember why you moved. And that's something here in Arizona we're really trying to focus on is educating newcomers about why Arizona is the way it is, which is not just a conservative state, but even a contrarian state. We do things our own way here.
Well, the gravitational pull of California is a significant problem for Arizona. There's no doubt about it, and we've seen it with some of the ballot initiatives. And make no mistake, I mean, there are people worth well over 100 million. I'll even say probably some billionaires that have moved from Arizona to Texas because Texas has zero income tax.
Sure.
Zero is nice. And you think about Elon Musk. Musk could afford to live anywhere on the planet, and he's living in Austin. And I am fairly certain the zero income tax is a helpful consideration. Now, light regulatory touch, a lot of talent, great airports, all that kind of stuff. That's important as well. But that zero income tax, Governor Ducey was right from day one that the goal in Arizona should always be to get that income tax as close to zero as possible. And it's very important for the state for that 2.5% flat tax to stick, because if it doesn't, there will be an exodus of successful business people from Arizona, state I love, to Texas.
Yeah.
They're just, I think that there is a difference, though, Chris and Sean. If you're moving to Texas from California, it is a further move. You could literally fall out of bed and be, you could come from California and be in Arizona. So it's very easy. You can keep your political beliefs and pay a lot less in taxes.
Sure.
If you're making that move from California to Texas, something else is going on. And you think about Elon Musk, you think about Joe Lonsdale, you think about some of these guys. They're not just coming to Texas. They're coming with I'd argue, the conviction of a convert that they will never let the state of Texas, as far as they can direct things, become what California has.
Yeah.
Because they've left for a very real reason.
Well, and in Musk's example, he brought a lot of stuff with him. I mean, building a gigafactory for the Cybertruck and batteries, and I mean, he's put his money where his mouth is, for sure, on the move.
Well, and
to
he's
Texas.
becoming more vocal too, which is something he wasn't before as
Yeah.
much. And in terms of why he's left and the policies that need to be pursued for businesses to thrive, and it's not happening in California.
Right.
And it's a much more robust environment for free speech. The woke culture, the cancel culture. Texas is so the big thing that has surprised me most about Texas is I was misinformed. It's not a state; it is a country. and that's the way
they knew that since inception, right? I mean, they've said the great
Republic
country,
of Texas,
the great Republic of Texas, right?
But it really is how it's not. You think about Arizona and Phoenix and Tucson, you've got 70-80% of the economic activity. That's just not the case in Texas.
Sure.
I mean, you have Houston, you have the Dallas area, you have San Antonio, and then you have El Paso, and you have some of the things going on in Laredo, which I think is the largest inland port in America. So you've got a lot of industry and diversity that's spread out across just a huge geographic territory.
Yeah, you've been doing quite a bit of traveling around Texas, and you've been posting some great posts. Tell us a little bit about that. What has been some of the most interesting places that you've traveled to? You've been eating lots of barbecue. I've seen that on some of your Instagram.
Well, all right, now I'm going to get into trouble. So this is going to be the only negative thing I'm going to say about Arizona. No, and it's true. I'm even going to bring up a name. It's all Mike Perenzino's fault. So that's a blast from the past.
It's so funny. I was thinking about Mike Perenzino earlier today.
I move out to Arizona, from New York. I hear, okay, you've got to try Arizona barbecue. I try it. I'm not going to say which place. It was nothing to write home about. I take a 25-year moratorium from barbecue. I go to Texas. People are like, and our friend Matt Ladner, the great, I think the best school choice guy in America, says, Glenn, you've got to try some of these different barbecue places. I'm like, Matt, I've been there. I've done that. But I try it, and it's the best stuff ever. I go on a little bit of a barbecue binge, if you will.
I was watching it, and I was like, this is amazing. He's going to all these great places, just an advertisement for Texas barbecue.
And it's real. It's just so good. No matter where you go, it's just people take it really seriously. And all the places are different. They have their own ambience. So the food in Texas is really great. The other thing, and this is a lot like Arizona, people are incredibly friendly.
Sure.
As a guy who comes from New York, it sticks out. The difference in Texas and Arizona is simply this, in my opinion. The roots are deeper in Texas. There's just so many people I've met, 5th, 6th, 7th generation. And I've been in rooms with 7, 8 people, and I'm the only non-native. And that never happened in Arizona. It's not a bad thing, but it never happened in Arizona. So the people are maybe a little bit more vested generationally in Texas. Arizona, I think, will get there over time. But it's just sort of an interesting fact.
Yeah, you're right. There's very few of us that are native Arizonans.
Well, you're talking to two of them.
Two of the four.
Two of the five, yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
And I guess everywhere I go, I'm non-native. But
when I tell people I'm like fourth, fifth generation Arizona, they look at me like I have two heads. I'm like, really? Yeah. So it's it's also a source of pride, but it needs. You're right. It needs to be something that the state becomes.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think Ducey's done a pretty good job. Not only is he attracting talent and people and industry, but I think there's more opportunities now to keep people in Arizona. Yeah, that's was the knock for a long time, is that we would import all this talent by virtue of our universities, and then everyone would leave. Yeah, and now people are staying. Yeah, which is a good thing. I would correct you on one thing, is that some people think that Tucson is an entire different country all by itself. Yeah. Within Arizona.
I learned, Chris, early on that it was less offensive when I would speak at Tucson to say I'm from New York than I was from
because
the
you're
great
right.
state of Maricopa. I learned that
you could
long time ago.
In Tucson, you can say I'm from Chicago or New York, and people give you a standing ovation. If you say you're from the great state of Maricopa, they walk out of the building.
Booyah, I'm here from Phoenix. I'm here to help.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, right. Never ended well.
Well, what do you see on the horizon for Texas? You're leading, the biggest business organization there, which is pretty remarkable. What's 2022 going to look like in Texas? We can get into some other 2022 outlooks and predictions if we want.
Yeah, I think that the major threats to Texas and Arizona are from Washington, D.C. Thank God the quote unquote Build Back Better bill, which was really just an inflation fueled mess boondoggle, is off the table for now. So, higher taxes, more regulations. I think the energy side is a really important one. And this is one where, there are some differences between the states and in Arizona and Texas. I mean, Texas is the largest producer of oil, of gas. And then of some of the, more renewable type fuels, Texas is way up there on wind, solar, hydrogen. But the oil and gas part is very important, and not just for Texans. I mean, 97% of the vehicles out there, at least, are still running on gas, on regular, oil that's converted into gasoline. The energy policies of the Biden administration are a real threat to the American economy. And when you have a president that's out there begging to OPEC to pump more and is saying yes to Nord Stream 2 to give the Russians something while he's saying no to Keystone, we need to think about that, because I think that's you think about manufacturing, you think about all of these industries that are a big deal to Arizona and Texas, having affordable energy, and yes, having it less carbon, all things being considered, that is better. But we still need a supply of affordable, stable energy.
Totally agree.
That's really timely, because we just had Drew Bond and John Hart on the podcast this last week, part of C3 Solutions, talking about how free economies actually are cleaner economies, and you're going to be seeing that in the States for sure. And Texas is a perfect example of that.
Chris, I appreciate. Yeah, exactly. More advanced economies. We're not burning cow dung,
right.
In our places. So you're absolutely right. I think the other area, and this is a positive area that will require bipartisan cooperation, is in chips, semiconductors. And that's an area where Arizona and Texas, we are the leaders in the United States of America. Arizona, TSMC and Intel, Texas now, Samsung and Texas Instruments being the big announcements in the past calendar year. And I'll just say, I think for the competitiveness of the United States, when you think of these advanced manufacturing chips that power AI, that power products that go into space, that have to do with cyber, the United States needs to be the world leader in advanced chips as well as energy production. I think those are two prerequisites to being the dominant force in the 21st century.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're really blessed to have Intel here in the Valley, and I don't think I've ever seen a year without a crane out at that plant in Chandler. There's always multiple cranes out there, which is good. The time we don't see a crane out there, I think we need to be worried.
Yeah, no question. So let's get into a little bit of predictions for 2022.
Oh yeah.
There's probably not much of a surprise. I guess Texas, is the redistricting done there?
Sean, the redistricting is done, and the congressional delegation will go from 36 to 38. So that's going to be a powerful delegation. Is going to become more powerful. As an interesting aside, there's 31 state senators in Texas, and there'll be 38 members of the House. So it's again, when I say Republic of Texas, country of Texas, the state senators in Texas have an incredible amount of pop. But if you're going to say global predictions, I'm going to say it right here. Maybe it's a little bit easier to say with the Texas hat. The U.S. Senate's going to flip. The U.S. House is going to flip. I think Senator Kelly will be retired, and he's going to make Senator Sinema look a lot smarter in terms of the type of senator that has the potential the Democratic side, if she remains a Democrat, to be elected in the state of Arizona. But I think both bodies will flip. And I think because of the mismanagement of the Biden administration on just about everything, again, I don't want to be too political, even though we're all sort of politicos in one way or another. But this has been, it's been a bad year across the board. I don't know if you could point to a single area that the Biden administration has really done a good job on. That's just, and look, if you forced me, I'd say, going back to our days on Capitol Hill, that I'm going to say it on the show, that Bill Clinton was a good president.
In comparison, absolutely. I mean, it's astounding to me. I mean, I pine for the days of Obama. I mean, that's how bad it is with Biden.
Yeah.
And I think you're right.
There was a higher level of competence in that administration.
No question.
Period.
Well, and there was a recognition that there was a way to push back on the left. I mean, Biden and the people around him just won't push back hard enough against the left, and this hard progressive push to the left, and it's gonna catch up to him in a way that I don't think they recognize, because with redistricting in Texas, you're going to pick up a couple Republican seats. Yeah. I think here in Arizona, we're going to go from a 5-4 delegation, 5-4 Democrat delegation to a 6-3 Republican delegation.
Yeah, based on what we saw last week. Yeah,
that's a pretty big switch. And so I would say that the U.S. House is probably going to be Republican by 15 to 20 seats, maybe even more. Senate, 52, 53 Republicans is my guess. At this point, I agree with you. I think Kelly is gone. I am shocked that he is not.
Where is Mark Kelly? Where is Mark Kelly? Has anybody seen him? I hear he's in Texas. I hear he's in Houston, to be exact. I think people should check for his residence in Houston, Texas.
Maybe he's campaigning with Beto.
Perhaps.
Right. But I've been shocked that he hasn't just completely hugged himself close. And I've said this before to Sinema. I mean, talk about the roadmap for re-election, and he just. I think he just thinks he's smarter or above it. I don't know.
Sinema can count. That's what I've said.
Well, she's a very bright.
She knows who elected
politician.
Her. But
I think I'll give her a lot of credit too. I think she really cares about the governing part. I've known her for a number of years. When she was in the Arizona legislature, she worked very hard to develop strong relationships across the aisle, and she has continued that in the United States Congress. And look, we do need more of that, because even if we could go back to the 90s heyday, it was Newt, Bob Dole, and Bill Clinton. And I can recall being at an AIPAC event in the late 90s where Frank Luntz had the floor, 500 people, center right, center left audience, nothing too extreme on either side. He asked people, how many people here today feel that they're better off today than 4 years ago? Every hand went up in that room. And when was the last time that happened in the United States of America? It was probably about at that moment.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Glenn, and one thing we've been looking at here in the state is you're seeing a tremendous amount of Hispanic surge within the Republican Party in Texas, and especially along the border in terms of what's happening in the border. You want to comment on that a little bit?
There is a real transformation going on. So what's happening, particularly in rural border areas in Texas, I could say this with pretty strong conviction, is there is a migration from Hispanic Texans in border communities voting Democratic to voting Republican. There's a new mayor of McAllen,
Yeah,
a very heavily Hispanic city. Where Republican just won. And we've got a great young congressman, Tony Gonzalez, who's doing an excellent job in Texas. And, he's in the Will Hurd seat. Very few people probably thought that he had a great chance in 2020, but he won with a nice margin. And I would bet the farm his reelection will have an even greater margin. So there's a migration. And I think it's because it's as Sean and Chris, it's what you were sort of saying earlier, is that the energy in the Democratic Party isn't just left, it is radical left. And that's not something that plays well in any part of rural America today, regardless of what the demographics may be.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a party that's based in California, Illinois, and New York.
yeah,
I mean, that's the problem that they're having.
yeah. But they failed to recognize it, and now it seems like they're almost recognizing it too late. You had the governor of Connecticut this last week back off of his statewide mask mandate because he claimed it's not working in the city of New York. But I think you're going to see a lot of Democratic governors kind of look around the landscape, and we've said it on the show before in terms of our own delegation. When does a Greg Stanton or a Mark Kelly finally look around them and realize they've got nothing? They have nothing to run on.
Yeah.
In terms of COVID policy, immigration policy, tax policy, build back broke, you name it, the president has left them empty and an open target.
Well,
especially with redistricting.
I agree, and I mean again, you take a look at where we are at the end of 2021. You have a president that has completely abandoned the center of the country. I think that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema gave Biden the greatest Christmas gift ever in killing the whatever you want to call that monstrosity, that $5 trillion bill, but also giving him a transportation victory, a $1.2 trillion victory. That's right. Not chopped liver.
Yeah.
But instead of talking about that and some of the areas of infrastructure that are pretty popular on both sides of the aisle, the administration has just tripled down on a package that would, if anything, it would do harm. We all know that inflation is real, and it's just I'm just simply perplexed by it.
So, do you think another prediction? Do you think that the threat that Chuck Schumer has right now to actually hold a vote on this is real, or do you think it's just smoke and mirrors, just to outflank AOC on his left?
I think there will be a vote on something. I still have a suspicion that there will be some sort of BBB that comes back in a very modified form. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think he's just going to put that bill up and just see it fail. I think Manchin and Sinema, that they will coalesce on something. It might be on, a very slimmed down version, but I'd be surprised if it just is put up in its current form and just goes down. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that I think we can learn a lot from what happened with Obamacare.
Sure.
They used reconciliation to pass that. There was insane arm twisting to get to that, in the House, especially because, moderate Democrats realized that this was not going to help them
No.
and could very well hurt them, which it did. And it was clear that Pelosi was willing to sacrifice her speakership for the legacy of government-run healthcare. And I think that we're back in that situation again. Schumer, the difference being that Schumer is under intense pressure to stay left because of this potential primary problem with AOC. And Pelosi has basically said, to hell with it, I'm going to be gone soon anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this.
If I make my members walk the plank.
Yeah. And that's exactly the ad that we ran in the Hill newspaper in 2009, is that Pelosi's making you walk the plank. And sure enough, they lost, 60 some seats. So I do agree that they're not going to give up. There will be something, but it's just going to be a huge bloodbath for them in November, with the combination of redistricting and all these people casting a vote that they have no business, that the American people will just repel from.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It just, sometimes I just shake my head and I think, what in the world is going on? We don't learn.
Well, and that's where I think that, and I think of the great work that some of our nation's governors have done. And I'm going to put Governor Abbott, Governor DeSantis, Governor Ducey. I have high hopes. I think Governor Youngkin-elect will do a great job in Virginia. They know how to govern, and they've governed successfully. States that are flush with cash, good policies, people moving in, dynamic, diverse economies, and I think the governing part is going to be very, very important in Washington, D.C. And this is where I'm going with this. I know this is probably something I shouldn't say given the current construction of the Senate, but and 25 years ago this would have been fighting words.
Sure.
Blow up the filibuster. I'm ready to go 2024. All the marbles. AOC and Bernie win, country's over. Yeah, we tried. Well, I mean, they're not going to win.
Right.
But Republicans win. We're going less taxes, less regulations, good trade policy, sensible immigration with border security. We're going for broke. That's how I look at it right now. There are stark differences, but I have faith in the American people, and I have faith in the American people for a simple reason. Look at the Wall Street Journal graph. People are moving to the states with the policies that the three of us have championed our entire life.
Right.
And they're fleeing the states that are more autocratic, and I don't see that trend changing. If anything, it's probably going to accelerate.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, let's go for it all.
Agree on something.
I don't know if I agree on blowing up the filibuster. I'm not there yet.
But
it's a good point.
Well, it is, and that's the point that Sinema has made: is do you really want to blow up the filibuster over this when you give President DeSantis or whatever and a House and a Senate to do whatever they want with 51 votes? Harry Reid passed away this last week at the end of the year. His legacy is a Supreme Court that is 6 justices appointed by Republicans and 3 by Democrat. I mean, that's his legacy, because he blew up the filibuster on the judicial nominees.
Yeah.
And then Republicans were able to use that to get their picks on the court. So I'm with you, Glenn. I think that if they blow it up, okay, we'll play that game, because it's going to, in the long run, it's going to help freedom, because you're exactly right. The American people are going to vote with their feet, and they're going to vote in a way that this remains a center-right country, regardless of what Chuck Schumer and AOC try to claim, and Nancy Pelosi.
And I'll say this: ideally, things do move with bipartisan majorities. I do think that is a better situation for the country. I've heard Senator Kyle say it's a good thing for the durability of laws if the other side, the minority party, has a stake. Maybe it's 20 or 30%. But I think of a lot of the things I worked on when I was with Senator Kyle. there was bipartisan support, and they've endured. And there isn't a lot of rumblings that these things should be wiped out. So I would always prefer to have a bipartisan vote on big issues. But the difficulty of governing the country and the migration under Republican and Democratic administrations to executive power, in part because it is tough to get that 51st vote in the Senate or 60th, is something where I'm personally have come to the Bob Rob point. Let's put it all on the line.
Yeah. No, I agree. The executive power has been way too expanded. It started.
That is
well.
true.
It started. I don't know. Probably under Nixon to some degree. Less so with Reagan. Definitely with Clinton
Obama
and Bush and Obama.
Yeah.
And even Trump, and now Biden. I mean, it's we've got to figure out ways to pull that power back, because it's not the way the Constitution, the founders, envisioned this.
Yeah, but so much of it also is the Congress exercising their power and their duty to do their job. I mean, they leave so much of the governing up to the executive branch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's because they don't want to make the hard decisions.
They don't want to make the hard decision and then have to run on those decisions, and that's unfortunate.
Well, even spending bills, doing these
that's what I'm talking
omnibus
about.
bills. In the olden days, appropriation bills, they were a great way for the right and the left to check an administration.
Yep.
And to get good priorities in. I'm not talking about earmarks. I'm talking about just good old-fashioned governing and oversight. And it's sort of a lost art. So again, when I talk about the filibuster, for the country to really be healthy, we do need to get back where 60%, we're passing ideally major bills with a bipartisan healthy majority. But I am becoming more and more concerned that the country is so divided that some of these things that are popping up, particularly during this current administration, may be difficult to unravel with 60 votes.
Yeah. Well, and what you're talking about, especially with regard to BBB or Build Back Broke, is the fact that there are no Republican votes on the other side. They've held fast. And secretly, what we've talked about on this show, and I think some people are beginning to recognize, is you've got about 6 to 9 senators in the background saying no, and are really pleased that Sinema and Manchin are taking the slings and arrows for them. And so even if and so that's why this vote, if it were to take place, with the bill as written, is so dangerous for the so-called majority.
Well, Chris, and your point is really important. I mean, these are profiles in cowardice.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Manchin and Sinema have stepped up. It's gutsy. It's courageous. I mean, Manchin has been harassed. I mean, Sinema's been followed into the restroom, for God's sakes. Where are the others? And what also concerns me is I think in the House and the Senate, the men and women who serve in those positions, they've miniaturized themselves. I think about when we were, getting involved in politics. These were name brands. These are Republicans or Democrats. I would get starstruck with the members. Now, how do you admire or get starstruck by someone who's hiding under their desk and saying, "Okay, has Senator Manchin stopped this bill? Has Senator Sinema stopped this bill?" I mean, what's the point? We're the greatest country that's ever existed. Do your freaking job.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So many Americans
hammer, laying down the hammer,
laying it down.
Do your job.
I was going to ask you this in a roundabout way, but you kind of gave me a good segue, and that is, listen, I was a bit of a fan of Ted Cruz, not really, but I don't know of any other senator that has challenged this administration the way your senator has, in a way that's actually been good. Yeah. I mean, on the committee hearings and drawing out, really stark differences between both parties. I think Ted Cruz has really stepped up the last year.
Senator Cruz is a brilliant lawyer, and on a number of the elements in the the $5 trillion package, he's probably been the most effective Republican in tearing them down piece by piece, particularly on the energy side. But I'll also say I'm a huge fan of our senior senator, Senator John Cornyn.
Yeah, he's
He is
an amazing
a senator.
guy.
Senator. He was AG. He was on the state Supreme Court. He really knows his stuff as well. And in addition to being able to really go after the administration policies that have been horrifically executed, like border security, Senator Cornyn does a great job of working with Democrats, such as Senator Sinema, on good bipartisan solutions. So I hold both of the Texas United States senators in high regard.
It's been a very, great senators.
Well, God bless Texas.
Yeah. Hey, Glenn, we can't thank you enough for being here. We
On that note,
God bless Texas. Let's
God
go.
bless Texas.
But our time is up, and we're going to definitely have to have you back, and hopefully you
Hopefully
can
in person.
get to Phoenix and do this in person, and
Would
we'll
love
do
to.
some reveling in the olden days and talk about what else is going on in Texas and across the country. But Texas is lucky to have you. We're sorry to have you not here anymore.
We were
but-
lucky to have you
Yeah, we
here
were.
for the years that we did. And Arizona is a changed state because of your leadership.
No question.
So,
No question.
you know,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. And we appreciate your friendship
Likewise.
more than you know. So thanks so much for coming on. And just remember, Glenn, that this podcast was founded on the ideas of faith, freedom, and free enterprise, which are the founding ideals of our great country.
Yeah. And if you want to follow Glenn, he's got a great Twitter feed. I just lost it. Glenn, how can people
Glenn, how
follow
can we
you?
follow you?
At Glenn Hammer.
At Glenn Hammer.
That's it.
That's 2 N's and 1 M.
And you're
2
active-
N's and 1 M.
And you're active on LinkedIn too. And thanks so much again for coming on. And God
Thank
bless you.
gentlemen.
Have a
Thanks for
great
what
one.
you're doing.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. That was great.